if those want to enter the lines afterwards. So everyone as far as possible to the middle, please. Thank you. And right side as well, please get to the middle. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Testing. Okay, we'll be starting as soon as there's enough leeway for the sound in the room. So,
hello. Yeah, as was introduced, my name is Leah Rowe. I'm here to talk about my project, Libreboot. I assume most of you here know what it is, but it's a free Coreboot distribution, BIOS/UEFI firmware replacement. I will also have somewhat of a detour in this talk and talk about one of my other projects, Coreboot. So, yeah, first of all, who am I? I started the Libreboot project in December 2013. I started another project called Coreboot in 2023. I will also be talking about that at some point in this talk. I've been using free software, Linux, since 2005. I've been an avid supporter of it ever since. I'm also involved quite heavily in politics. I've been advised by a friend that it's probably not good to be partisan at a talk. So let's just say I'm a digital/human rights activist. And how that translates into free software, well, you know, the thing to realize about free software is it's not just for like computer geeks. When you think about it, the way society works, you know, we live in a computer age. We use computers for everything nowadays. Everyone needs an internet connection. Everyone's got everyone's got in their pockets nowadays what would have been regarded as a supercomputer 50 years ago. You know, so everything that you do in civil society depends on access to computing, access to information, and how your computing functions should be. The whole idea with free software is you have the freedom to run the software however you want. You can modify it however you want. You can study it. You can share it. And in the context of politics and society in general, that translates essentially into democracy. Because if all of the services that you use in everyday life are proprietary, meaning you don't have control over your technology, then it can be argued that you don't necessarily have a fully democratic society. So free software is not, as I say, it's not just for nerds. It's for everyone. Now, the thing to realize about software freedom is it's all well and good if you know how to install Linux, you have some idea of what you're doing, but everyone needs to have free software, because if only a small group of people know how to use it, then that's obviously no good. You need everyone else to work on all of the services that you use. So they need software freedom as well. If you've got an entire industry that's all Windows, Mac, or whatever else, that's no good. So the structure, I'm going to go first into the structure of this talk. So in previous talks that I've done, I've been much more sort of theoretical. I've gone on for an hour talking about my projects in detail. The first 20 to 25 minutes or so of this talk is going to be going through the history, the technical aspects of the project, but it's not going to be overly technical. It's going to be more ideological. I'm going to talk about the goals of the project, but the focus of this talk is going to be on the second half. So I'm going to try to get through the talk itself in about 20, 25 minutes, and then in the second half of this talk, I'm going to give a live demonstration showing Libreboot itself. So I'm going to go through the build system. I'm going to go through, I'm basically just, the first thing I'm going to start with is I'm going to show, if you're just a user, you want to use Libreboot, I'm going to show all of the typical ways that you'd use it. I'm going to show, maybe go into some of the development aspects, show how certain things are maintained, things like that. And during that second half, it will also be a Q&A. So if you have any questions, if I'm doing the demo and something doesn't seem right, put your hand up, interrupt me. I'll explain. I'll stop and explain. And if you want, so that's assuming, of course, that I stick to this schedule. We don't know how long this talk's going to go on for. So what is Libreboot? As I briefly mentioned in the intro to this talk, it's a free or open source BIOS or UEFI firmware replacement. What does this mean? The BIOS, or UEFI, as a lot of people refer to it, is the thing that starts your computer. So it starts the CPU, initializes memory controller, peripherals. Then it comes up with a nice little interface. You start your bootloader, you boot your operating system, right? So, Linux, BSD, whatever it is. Libreboot is also what's known as a Coreboot distro. So in the past, some people have wrongly assumed that Libreboot is a fork of Coreboot. That's not the case. You know how you have, say, Debian, Ubuntu, Arch Linux, I suppose? Those are Linux distributions. So if you want to use Linux, you don't have to download the Linux kernel. You don't have to download, GNU Core Utils or X11, Waylands, and all of the you don't have to do everything yourself. You have these wonderful projects that package everything for you and make it really, really easy, and they provide user documentation support. Libreboot is essentially that, but for Coreboots. So it packages Coreboot and all of the various programs there. So why use Libreboot? Well, Libreboot is a free software project. So I assume most people in this audience know what free software is, but free software, I'll just briefly explain again in case any one person doesn't know. Free software means you have the right to study the program, see how it works. You can run it on as many computers as you like. You can share it with your friends. You can do whatever you want with it. This is an important thing to have from an ideological perspective. It's a matter of civil liberties, as I explained earlier on in this talk. It democratizes computing, essentially. So this is really the main aspect of Libreboot. The main point of Libreboot is to be a free firmware distribution, but there are other reasons you might want to use it as well. So it has quite a lot of nice encryption features in GRUB, for example. If you want to boot Linux and you want to encrypt everything, you can use full disk encryption on standard proprietary firmware, but Libreboot, for example, comes with GRUB as one of the bootloader options when you start. It can read LUX partitions directly, so you can have an encrypt. So if you have the /boot directory with your Linux kernel, you can decrypt that directly, so that nothing on your disks is insecure. And it has other security features as well. I'll go into some of this later on in the talk. No DRM, no anti-features. So, for example, this ThinkPad that I've got, this is a ThinkPad T580. It was added to Libreboot last month, actually. On ThinkPads, for example, if you want to use your own wireless card, like upgrade it to something better, Lenovo usually has a whitelist in their firmware that means you can't use anything but anything except what they provide. Libreboot doesn't have features like that. Another advantage to Libreboot is because it's a free software project, because the community has control over it, because you can study it, change it, and completely understand every aspect of it, you get continue for. Libreboot also tries to provide security features that you really can't get in most other firmware projects. And, well, it should go without saying, if we want free software on everywhere, if we want everyone to use free software, then that logically must mean that every computer has to have free firmware, whether it be Libreboot or something else. I'll briefly explain what a Coreboot payload is. Now, Coreboot, as I explained, is the projects that Libreboot uses for hardware initialization. But Coreboot only does hardware initialization. It doesn't provide. You know how when you boot your machine and it comes up with a nice little like menu. You can select your SSD or a flash drive or netboot or something like that. Coreboot doesn't do any of that. It just starts your hardware and then jumps to what's called a payload. This payload is typically what provides your bootloader. So you can use GRUB, Linux. You can use EDK2. EDK2 is Intel's reference implementation for UEFI. It is a free software project. It's on their GitHub. Libreboot provides. Libreboot doesn't provide every payload. You can modify it and add whatever you want, but we provide GRUB, SeaBIOS, and U-boots on various boards. And I'll go into that later on in the talk as well. You can use other payloads. So, and this will be in the demo. You can actually modify each board to use Coreboot. So we have our own logic in the Libreboot build system for adding payloads to boards, but you can override that and use Coreboot's logic instead, and Coreboot has more options. Again, I'll go through this in the demo in the second half of the talk. So you can find, if you want to know more about Coreboot in general, it is one of Libreboot's upstream projects, you can go to coreboot.org. Now, so I explained earlier on in the talk that Libreboot is a Coreboot distribution. Well, let's compare this to, say, Debian. If you've got Debian, there's a bootstrap script that makes the installer image, and then you've got a package manager, apt-get. Same with any other Linux distribution. Naturally, then, Libreboot has I'll go into some brief history about the Libreboot project. So, I started the project in December 2013. It wasn't initially a project as such. I was running, and I'm still running actually, a company on the internet called Minifree, minifree.org. It wasn't called minifree.org back then, it was a different domain name, but same thing. A friend that I was talking to at the time was very excited about what I was doing. I didn't really have any plans in the early days of the projects. I just had my company, and I provided Coreboot images, I provided source code on my company website. There wasn't really a project when this all first started. It was just commercial, right? But a friend saw the potential before I did, actually. For his privacy, I'm not going to actually say his name, but he contacted the FSF, and needless to say, the FSF was ecstatic. Their licensing and compliance manager, Joshua Gay, that's his surname, IRC Nick was J. Gay at the time. He actually emailed me personally to say that the Free Software Foundation is really happy with what you're doing, and they wanted to promote my work. So I initially just went through the certification process. So the FSF, they have a process, a certification process. It's called Respects Your Freedom. It's for hardware suppliers, and the idea is that they want to verify that each company selling, whether it be a computer, a 3D printer, I don't know, an MP3 player, a mobile phone, whatever it is, it has to be all free software. It can't have any spyware. It can't have any, nothing malicious. Fully free in spirit and actually free. So I went through the process for that. In the early days of the projects, I actually didn't take this as seriously back then. I mean, I was kind of aware of it, but you may or may not be aware, Coreboot is nominally a free software project, but it doesn't always. Sometimes in Coreboot you do need certain binary blobs for certain boards, and I'll go through that later on. But the original purpose of Libreboot as part of this certification process was to provide a fully free deblobs Coreboot distribution. Fully free. A few months in 2016, after applying in 2015, Libreboot was actually referred to as GNU Libreboot, and we actually did 3 releases of that then. My rationale for having Libreboot join the GNU projects back then was I didn't possibly see how it could hurt. I only saw ways that it could be improved, simply by virtue of the prestige of the GNU infrastructure itself. Libreboot was and is a free software project started with the same goals. We want free software everywhere. So ideologically, we were compatible. There were some technical disagreements during this time that were not foreseen during the application process, so standards relating to documentation, coding styles, also the governance of the project. I was very critical at the time because basically I felt like Libreboot was Libreboot's, and the point of the FSF was just to promote it. But long story short, there was a very ugly breakup from the GNU project in 2016. I regret what happened. I'm not really going to go into much detail in this talk. You can read up. There's actually an article on libreboot.org. If you can go to libreboot.org/news/10.html, 10 as in 10.html. For the next few years, Libreboot then was its own project. During this time, I actually stepped down. I'm going into the history of the projects now. So I actually stepped down from the Libreboot projects for a number of years. From 2017 to 2021, I was going through some of my own things at the time, so I left other people in charge that were in the projects then. We created a committee that everyone could vote on decisions, and it was decided then that the whole projects would be rewritten. One of the design flaws of the original Libreboot build system was it wasn't really very flexible. I mean, it worked, but you'd type one command, build one board, and it wasn't, that was it. There wasn't really a concept of configurability back then. So the purpose of the rewrites, I'm going to go into some details about what they are. So I started OSBoot with a very strict and clear policy that basically says, and this is what I'm going into now, if a blub can be avoided, avoid it. If it can't, include it. Try to minimize the harm that certain blobs can do. So for example, on a lot of newer Intel systems, if you have the Intel management engine, Libreboot by default will use the ME cleaner utility. And there are some other examples as well. You can actually read, that's the basic summary. If you want to read it in detail, there's this link on the slide, libreboot.org/news/policy.html. Now, I should clarify that this was originally on the OSBoot website, and I'm going to go into some details later on. I did not use the rewritten design for the Libreboot build system then. I took my work from 2016, when I essentially stepped down from the project and modernized it. So made it possible to use newer machines, added lots of world that I did, but I basically said, look, you people have not done releases in 5 years, and I've got this build system over here in Libreboot that works. It's got a ton of new boards, and people are using it, people are happy. So I decided then, why don't I also do this in Libreboot? So, and that's exactly what I did. Throughout 5 years of bad code and just took over. So obviously though, from my perspective then, Libreboot had been essentially dead for a number of years. So getting people involved was very difficult. Yeah, it was a bit, I mean, we got there in the end, but the problem, as I've explained with Libreboot, was if you have this policy of only having fully free software, no blobs, no nothing, you can only support boards from like 10, 15, even sometimes 20 years ago. So my thought then was, well, why don't I just merge the two projects together? Just have OS. We've already got Libreboot, which has been established for years. So with a Canadian developer that I was working with at the time, I apologize, Caleb, if I'm mispronouncing your name. Caleb Legrand. Maybe someone can correct my pronunciation. Anyway, he did a lot of work with me on OSBoot in 2022. So he was amazing, and you can go on to the libreboot.org, libreboot.org/contrib.html. It's got all of the contributions that people have made. He's on there, and yeah. So we worked together on that, and so he worked on the build system. He worked on the documentation. I worked on the build system, and we merged. osboot.org was completely removed and redirected to Libreboot. There was a release shortly after that, post-merge, and you can probably tell what's going to happen next. The FSF, being the FSF, decided, well, we are not very happy with this. So at the Libre Planet 2023 conference, one of their people decided, why don't we make another Libreboot project, libreboot.at. Now, I would be a hypocrite if I said that I object to a fork. I don't. I want people to fork my work. If you want to do your own thing and you want to, go your own way, that's fine. But they tried to use the Libreboot name, and they made it very clear that they wanted me to stop using the Libreboot name. So what exactly was I supposed to do? So I basically just said, well, okay. So I was aware that this was going to happen because one of the people that I work with in Libreboot was contacted by one of their developers at the time saying, hey, do you want to work on this new Libreboot fork with us? And he told me about it, so I saw that the FSF was doing a talk from Dennis, he's one of the founders of the GNU project. He had a talk. It didn't say that it was going to be a Libreboot fork. It was called something like Seizing the Means of Free Software Production or something like that. Anyway, I anticipated that he was going to, correctly, that he was going to announce a fork during that talk. So I did a Libreboot talk the same day, hours before his talk. Did vast amounts of work, much more than we did before, over an insane period. We did like 3 releases in a month. After a month, Drew DeVoltz, the owner of Source Huts, they were using Source Huts to host their website, their repositories, their mailing list, everything. As some people may know, Drew DeVoltz is not a fan of the FSF, and I basically went to him and said, look, can we do something about this? So, long story short, the project was deleted from Source Huts, and after that they just didn't want to do it. I can probably surmise that they wanted it to look a bit more grassroots, rather than hosting it on GNU.org and calling it GNU Libreboot, which obviously wouldn't fly. They wanted to make it look a bit more sort of independent. But the FSF's tried again, and they created a new project called GNUboot. A bit more respectful this time. They weren't trying to use the Libreboot name, but they still had the same rotten attitude. They were going around telling people that Libreboot is a proprietary software project. So I decided, well, look, they were also using Libreboot from July 2022. This was mid-2023 at that point. They were using a version of Libreboot that was a year out of date. And I looked at their repository, and they didn't really seem to be going anywhere. So I thought, you know what? Why don't I make a project that does exactly what you want? So in October 2023, I launched a new project called GNUboots. GNUboots is essentially the old Libreboot, the old policy, fully free, FSF compliant, and all of that. There's a lot of history. The purpose of this talk is not to talk about GNU, but obviously no Libreboot talk is complete without mentions of the FSF, and this is part of the history of the Libreboot project. But long story short, a few years later, things calmed down. It's all well and good now. Anyway, I don't want to keep talking about the FSF. So there's been loads and loads of new work over the last few years. So, for example, this ThinkPad that I'm running is a ThinkPad T580. The T480 was added, well, it was also the Dell Optiplex 3050 micro. Yeah, a developer that I work with, Mate Kukli, I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly this time. He works on a utility called dguards, which there's a feature on Intel systems called the Intel Boot Guard, and what that does is, if the manufacturer enables it, your firmware is cryptographically signed, so if you change anything in the firmware, it doesn't boot anymore, so this makes Coreboot impossible. On 8th generation, well, I say 8th generation, anything that has Intel Management Engine version 11, any 11.x. He wrote a utility called dguard, which used an existing vulnerability in ME version 11 to completely... The vulnerability in question on the ME basically allows you to run unsigned code. So he used that to figure out how to disable the Intel boot guard, and from that we can now support a lot of newer machines, because a lot of newer machines now use boot guard. Yeah. So I'm going to go briefly through the future roadmap of the project. So at the moment, there's a lot of work needed on the documentation of Libreboot. A lot of people have got back to me and saying, it's all over the place. If I want to figure out how to flash one machine, I've got to read this page, then that page, and it's all... One of the things that we really need to do in the project at the moment is audit the documentation and make it a bit more fluent for non-technical people. One of the things I also want to do with Libreboot is add Tiana Core. There is Tiana Core, or EDK2, on lots of modern desktop systems now. You need to have UEFI, because EDK2 in particular, alongside Coreboot, allows you to have a feature called relocatable bar, or base address register. If your graphics card needs to use a lot more memory, as a lot of them do nowadays, you need to have this feature. And we currently don't have this feature, but alongside EDK2, if you have like an Intel Arc or a modern NVIDIA, AMD, whatever it is, a lot of graphics cards just simply don't work anymore. You need UEFI, so we're looking into that. I'm currently working on integrating a bunch of other projects. So there's another project called Mr. Chromebox, which supports a lot of Intel-based Chromebooks. I've been working with the developer of that project has provided me with some advice, and I'm currently working on integrating those in Libreboot. Libreboot also became part of a non-profit organisation called Software in the Public Interest last year. They essentially provide fiscal sponsorships for projects, so like if you want to make a donations page or something like that, and they can also provide a lot of legal-related services. They provide support for a lot of big projects like Debian, Arch, Arch Linux is a member. If you want to... I said earlier in this talk, I'm not going through the technical aspects of Libreboot in detail. And I'm not going through... If I wanted to talk about every contributor that has ever done anything for the project, it'll be like 100 slides. So if you want to go on to... So if you go on to libreboot.org/contrib.html, you can find a list of people who have contributed to the project. I am wrapping up the talk part now. I'm going to do the demo in a little bit. If you want to help Libreboot, some generic advice is use it. Tell people about it. Tell your friends. Go online, blog about it. If you're technically inclined, you can work on Coreboot itself. You can add new mainboards. As I explained before, you can also work on improving user documentation, also provide user support on RC. This is obviously obligatory, this part. I've used some images from other projects. Thank you. And as I explained before, the next part of this talk will be a demo, and a Q&A. So, yep, thank you. Now, I am mindful of the fact that I'm currently holding this microphone, but I need to be able to type to do the demo. So would it be possible for me to wear the thingy? Yeah, thank you. I'll switch to this one. Okay, so I'm going to sort of improvise. So I'm going to go in. Okay, so if I go now into the, let me put that terminal on the other screen. Oh yeah, if anyone wants to ask questions, so as I said before, I'm going to do a demo now on Libreboot itself, on the build system, how it all works. But if you want to ask anything, this is the Q&A session now. So if you have any questions, I'm sure someone wants to pass around the mic. I'll ask any questions you have. It can be about the demo itself, or it can also be. I can't see. Oh, okay. Okay. Hopefully you can see this. So I'll tell you what, I've got an idea. Can you stand with me and hold the mic to my mouth so I can speak and use both hands? This is me improvising. So, thank you very much. Yeah. Really difficult to do anything on this screen. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, pass around the mic and you can ask whatever you want about Libreboot.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, I'll answer. Yeah. I can't see my mouse on the second screen, so it's kind of difficult to...
I was wondering, how safe is Libreboot to use on my laptop that I use every day and that I don't want to crash and keep booting?
Relatively safe. So we have a testing process. So we do testing releases first, and then we do stable releases. If you want to have some assurance that you won't brick your machine, I recommend sticking to stable releases of Libreboot, and generally that will not pose an issue. If you do have problems, you can report them immediately, and we will try it. Okay, I can't see what I'm doing. So
should I then first check all the hardware if it's all supported, or?
Sorry, I'll say that again.
Should I then first check if all my hardware is supported by Libreboot, or is that
not
a problem in general?
So if you go to libreboot.org/docs/install, there is a compatibility list there.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, could everyone see the screen clearly before, like when it was black and white? We'll try to ask somebody from the staff. We'll try.
Outputs. Yeah, hang on. I'm trying to I can't literally see. Oh, there we go. If there's any more questions, feel free to ask.
Hello. So from what I understood by skimming the website, aside from Chromebooks, basically every other machine requires you to open it in order to connect an external flash to install it. Is there like any plans to deal with it? Because well, I probably can do that, but if we are targeting basically the entire world, it's more complicated for them.
Yeah, I think it really just depends on the machine that you're flashing. So some are easier than others. Some you can just run software to install Libreboot. Some you do need to take apart. Unfortunately, it's just one of those things that's currently unavoidable. Okay, I have light mode enabled in my terminal now. Okay, can people see that terminal better now? Okay, much better. Right. So we've got how long have we got left?
Any other question, maybe?
Okay, we've got about 10 minutes. Okay, 10 minutes should be enough time. So I'm just going to briefly go through. I'm going to enable. How do I actually enable mirror mode? So outputs. Yeah, just keep asking questions. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. I don't normally do mirror mode in Xrandr, so. Okay, I'll just do it this way. Okay, so if you want to use Libreboot, I'm going to give you a brief tech demo. So let's say you have...
Sorry. What is the single most powerful device currently compatible with Libreboot?
It really depends on what you want to do. So if you want a laptop, for example, the most powerful laptop you want to use right now is probably a ThinkPad T480 or T580. If you want a desktop machine, it really depends on what you're doing. So if you're mostly concerned with multi-threading, for example, there's an older boards that we support, the Asus KGP D16. It's really old now, but you can use large 2 16-core CPUs. Like if you're doing lots of compiling, like building Linux kernels or anything that needs a lot of threads. If you're building a modern desktop for workstation use, you might use, say, one of the Haswell systems that we support. We are looking to add more modern Alder Lake desktop boards at some point in the near future. Yeah, there's really no concrete answer to your question. The most powerful or viable system to use really depends on your use case scenario.
That answers my question. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so yeah, brief tech demo. So there's really not much to it. So like, let's say you want to, feel free to interrupt me anytime. If you want to use...
Sorry, we have another question here.
Okay, so I'm just going to briefly go through. So let's say you just want to use Libreboot, right? Let's say I want to install Libreboot on a ThinkPad T580. So if I do this command, /mkb coreboot list or less, you can get a list of boards, and you can search T580, and I actually already know what's in the output here, but let's say now I want to build for the 580, you can go like that. Oh, okay. It's very difficult to see what I'm doing here, so MK. Go ahead, I'll ask you a question.
One of the question is like, how easy is it to make it possible for like a new device? If I have, let's say, a modern ThinkPad and I want to try adding support for that, how long do you think it would take? Is it like a lot of reverse engineering and things, or just go look at documentation specs and just write?
Yeah, so if it's not already supported in the Coreboot project, then there are going to be certain questions you have to ask. So is the chipset already supported? Like what Intel Gen is it? Is the platform, like is everything supported properly? Generally speaking, on laptops, there's also an extra chip called the EC, the embedded controller, which is very different per machine, and you usually have to do a bit of reverse engineering there. Coreboot tries to generalize as much as possible for each platform, such that each mainboard has its own quirks defined in code, but then you have universal code that's reusable on hundreds of different mainboards. Go to the Coreboot projects first, work with them, add the boards. When you add a board to Libreboot, it's essentially by virtue of configuration. Libreboot supports what Coreboot already has, and it provides pre-configured machines that you can use. Yeah, there's no real set answer to your question, but I would advise that you contact the Coreboot projects about this. Okay, so I'm going to go through. So I've just built. One of the main things you have to realize about every talk is there is always going to be an error when you do a command that works perfectly that morning. You're always going to have something. Okay, so I'll ask another question if you want, Fabian.
Oh, yeah. For the recent inclusion of the top 10 router, is that indicative that there might be more...
Sorry, say again, what router?
Oh, the top 10 one?
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, just to finish... Sorry, I cut you off. Is that indicative that there might be more support for like Alder Lake, Twin Lake products down the line? Or...
Yes, and this is something that we're actively pursuing. You were asking if we're looking at more boards, more from that same generation, right? Yes.
Great presentation. I have a question here. You mentioned that you are supporting 8th generation of Core i5, i7 CPUs from Intel. such as the ThinkPad T480 and T480S. What about T490 and 90S, which are using the same generation of Intel CPUs?
Yes. I believe you said the ThinkPad T490. The T490 uses Intel Management's Engine version 12, for which a hack to disable the Intel boot guard has not yet been found. So that's currently not feasible in Libreboot.
Thank you, great talk. So if I want to use a TPM and ideally something like measured boot through Libreboot, can I do that? How is it?
Libreboot has no facility for use of a TPM. There are other projects that use it. You can look at a project called Heads, for example, which uses TPM and has what it calls measured boot. It uses the Linux kernel as a payload, and it uses kexec with its own interface to boot your system. It's very similar to using something like, say, GRUB or something like that. And yeah, it has that feature. Libreboot currently does not facilitate this in any way. That's not to say it can't, just that it currently doesn't. You could probably modify it however you want to do that. The TPM is enabled on some boards, but we don't really use it for anything at the moment. Okay, so the tech demo is a bit of a nightmare actually, because I can't see what I'm doing because I'm looking at the screen. So anyway, I can't really show it running because we've only got a few minutes left. So, okay, so let's say you're a user, you want to do Libreboot. Let's say you're on Debian, right? You go like that, MK, dependencies, Debian. That will run that will install all the build dependencies, and then if you want to build for your board, you do. This is you can go onto libreboot.org/docs/build. There's also documentation about the build system itself on /docs/maintain. But if you want to say, go ahead and ask more questions if you want. I'll be outside if you want to crowd around me afterwards as well. So you do that, Coreboot, MKB, Coreboot list, it shows you a bunch of boards, and then you can just say Coreboot and it'll build every board, or you can add target name here. I can't, if you say, I don't know, T.
Hello, we have time for one last question.
Yeah.
Yeah, a question. I have a Libreboot on X200 laptop, which I'm really happy about that, boot about in 2.5 seconds. But I have a problem, maybe it's not a feature already implemented with QEMU and instruction to have hardware acceleration. So of course, the virtual machine is really slow.
Sorry, when you say hardware acceleration, what are you referring to?
I'm talking about the WXM.
Yeah, well, it's a fairly old, the most efficient answer is it's a very old machine. If you want modern hardware acceleration features and whatnot, you need to upgrade your hardware. I know that's probably not what most people want to hear, but the ThinkPad X200 is 18 years old, so...
Yeah, but if I use it, the normal BIOS, I have acceleration in my virtual machine. And
oh, sorry, I misunderstood. Are you referring to virtualization?
Exactly.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that is something that we can look into. So if you have a bug relating to that, you can send it to the bug tracker on Codeberg. Codeberg.org/Libreboot/LBMK, and you can some information about that.
Okay, thank you for the talk.
Okay. Yeah, I do apologize. Anyway, yeah, so basically, if you want to... I briefly alluded to it in this somewhat dubiously successful tech demo, but as you saw from some of these commands, if you want to build Libreboot and install it on the machine, it's usually just like 1 or 2 commands. If you were going to build like your own firmware from scratch, you'd need to download Coreboot and type all of the commands. You'd need to know which cross-compilers to build. You'd need to download GRUB. You need to download this, download that, and it would be hundreds of commands. You'd have to go through 50 different configuration files. 50 is probably hyperbole, but you get the point. One command, and it just does everything. That would have been what I was going to do. I would have demonstrated that, but as I'm informed, we've run out of time. Again, thank you for coming to my presentation. If you have any more questions, we have all day, so feel free to crowd around me in the corridors outside or ambush me at your leisure during the rest of the FOSDEM conference. Thank you again for coming to my talk.